Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. We talk about different categories of wellness and seeking balance between them. There's overview info on our website, letsbewelltogether.com. This is episode 51. We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldeman Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land.
And welcome back to another episode of Let's Be Well Together. It's Sammy and Sheila here.
Hi, Sammy.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. So today we're going to talk about one of our facet activities, and we thought it would be a good idea for us to talk about dance and how that relates to, there's a bunch of facets, I guess, that can relate to.
Oh, for sure. And we have talked about dance before, especially in Move That Body, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But the interesting thing is now that you are teaching more and doing choreography, we thought that that would be an interesting topic, choreography in general and how it helps your wellness.
Yeah, definitely. And I think specifically your artistic wellness.
Yeah, definitely. I love choreography, and I actually think that I have been choreographing a lot of my life.
Yeah.
I just, when I was a kid, you just choreograph things all the time and you didn't even realize you were doing it. But I find choreography not just artistic, but also intellectual, emotional, mental. I find that there's so many things involved in choreography.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm the same way. Like, I love doing choreography. Specifically, I love creating a story.
Yes.
Like, I love the storytelling that dance can portray. But I think not everybody knows that. People think like dance, you just go on, you do a dance.
Yes.
I'd say some people, their choreography is very technical. But I love it when there's a story.
Oh, me too. For sure. I even love going to ballets that are more story-based.
Yes.
Compared to ballets classical ballets, or like, you can go to, I've seen the Jewels by the National Ballet, which was beautiful. And every section represented a different jewel. So a diamond or emerald or whatever, but wasn't a story.
Yeah.
Right. And I do just absolutely love the story because it just puts everything together. And I love choreographing stories.
Yes.
Because you read the story or you've heard the story, and then how are you going to interpret it in your choreography?
Yeah.
I do think that's really interesting. And because you're a new choreographer, I thought, I'd get some of your ideas on it.
For sure. Yeah. Two things come to mind. The first one, because you said when you read a story, you like to choreograph.
Yes.
So a couple years ago, I did a hip hop piece.
Yeah.
But I decided it was going to be Harry Potter.
Oh, yes.
And I had so much fun with it. And the kids had so much fun with it. And they got into their characters. On stage, they had their cloaks. And I had my Harry with his glasses and a little scar on his head. And then they were like, it was like a Harry versus Draco.
Okay.
And they had their wands. And they had so much fun with it.
Oh,
and
for sure.
I think it just like made them more excited to go on stage.
Yeah, it gives them a purpose. Like, and were there more characters in it? Like, did everyone basically have a character?
I just really had... It was like Gryffindor versus Slytherin. So some were in red and some were in green. Okay. And then it was Harry and Draco were like the main characters.
Right.
And then the others were more just like students at Hogwarts. I would have loved to do like a full production of like get Voldemort in there, get Hermione and Snape. Like,
oddly enough, I've never seen a whole production of.
Yeah, it'd be really cool.
It would be, but I have seen a few things. Like I've seen a ballet piece, and I've definitely seen it. Yeah, it's so much fun.
Definitely.
Yes, I've done a lot of story choreographies, quite a few of them to Disney, actually, because I really love the stories of Disney. Yeah. But generally, I find that if I just make up a story, I can do it. But something that I find that I do a lot is the music tells me what to do.
Yeah.
Do you find that?
Definitely.
And I find that very artistic, that you can listen to the music and it will tell you if you should be turning or if you should be sad or happy or... Like, I really like to let the music inspire me.
Yeah. So I'm doing a piece right now for the one studio I teach for too. I Want to Dance with Somebody, Whitney Houston.
Yes.
And you could totally do that one as like, this is just a classic jazz and everybody's going to be dancing and having fun. But I thought it'd be fun to have them all kind of like they're at a school dance and they're all like, you know, like kind of nervous to join, but then they join and then they have fun. And then, you know, the boy asks someone to dance and then, you know, they dance. And I'm trying to get them to break out of their shell to really like embrace a character and be like, okay, you guys are going to be like the cool girls that are like, I can't believe they're dancing right now. Like that's so embarrassing. But then there's one of you that's going to want to, you know, kind of edge onto the stage. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And I really hope once they really get into it that they enjoy it as well and can really like embrace the story. And I keep telling them that I'm like, I'm a storyteller with dance and not all dance teachers are. That's why I love to dance, is to like create something that's like different that maybe not everybody would think of.
Yeah. And when we're talking about choreography, it's actually putting the steps together to the music, like doing the steps. And I was telling John that I actually am much more nervous watching my pieces, my dancers perform than I ever was when I was performing.
Yeah, I agree.
When I was dancing, because you're putting yourself out there more. Like as a dancer, you're interpreting what your teacher wants you to do, and you're doing the choreography. But when you're the choreographer, this is your creation. It's everything that you picked the music, you've picked the idea, the costume and everything. And you've put yourself out there so much. It's, you're so nervous to see how it goes. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. And for Underdog Dance Corps, so that's all adults.
Right.
We did a dance show in the winter, or in December. And it was all the funds were going towards like the Women's Crisis Center.
Right.
I did like a little hip hop piece, and everybody who came in, I was expecting, you know, when you sign up for like a choreography class that's going to do a show, I would expect people that have danced in the past.
For sure. Because most adults that I've taught, they're like, I will take the class.
Yeah.
But I will not go on stage.
Exactly. Yes. Right. They're like, I do. And I'm like, I don't blame you. Like when people are asking me if I was going on stage, and I was like, no. I was like, why would I go on stage? No, I didn't. I was like, oh my gosh. But like, you know, there was 5 of them and they all came in and I was like, you've done hip hop before? They're like, absolutely not. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, good for you for like coming out. And they all like worked so hard to like create this fun atmosphere. And then when I watched them, I actually like teared up a bit because they're having so much fun on stage. And I was like, something about seeing like adults try something new and just give it their all.
It is amazing. Yes, it's very impressive. I love seeing adults come out and do it. Yeah, it is. It is really fun. And it really brings something out in them because it makes them less anxious to do other things in their life.
Definitely.
Because they're like, if I can go out there and do this, not ever being able to do it, not ever done it before.
Yeah.
And it's live. So you can't, you know, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah. And so it's quite an experience. And I've actually had that been told to me quite often that this is, you know, my child's personality has changed because of dance.
Right.
They become more positive. They're not afraid to try new things.
Yes.
They're not afraid to get up and talk in front of people.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to help people and to be part of a group and a lot of things that,
And something else I love too at like the studio when it's kids is that, you know, I love seeing that growth too of like a kid come out of their shell slowly. And I'm like, wow, like, look, you're smiling this time round, you know? And I also love seeing, you know, when maybe it's a mixed class and there's some people in the class that are very advanced and very good. And there's other people that are a little bit new, a little bit nervous. And I love seeing like when the advanced kids are embracing the others and, you know, like making a safe atmosphere for them as well and making sure that they're seen. I really like seeing that because sometimes you don't get that always.
No, you like to encourage that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just so happy to have this conversation with you, Sammy, because I mean, I've been choreographing for
ever.
And so to hear your experiences, and I'm glad that it is enhancing your well-being as well as I'm sure a lot of your students.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. We are in the area of spiritual wellness for our interview today, and we're welcoming back Reverend Jessica Purple Rodela, who is both atheist and a minister in the Unitarian Congregation. So welcome back, Rev Jess.
Thanks, John. Good to be back.
And we met you in an earlier interview. Rev Jess grew up in Panama, and her family moved back to Texas in the late 1970s. She graduated in 2008 from Meadville Lombard Theological School a Unitarian Universalist seminary, and she moved to Canada in 2008, currently serves Grand River Unitarian Congregation. Rev Jess is a mentor to ministerial candidates and chaplaincy students. And last time, just a great conversation, which I thank you for, where we got a sense of atheism and spirituality. Obviously, we just barely scratched the surface, but still it was enlightening to me. Today, I want to start by asking you about a story you mentioned when we were setting up the interview. You mentioned somebody named Josea Ballou, and I'm wondering if you could first tell us who that is.
Thanks, John. So Josea Ballou is one of my absolute favorite characters from Unitarian Universalist theological history. He is a 19th century Universalist minister in North America. And at that time, Universalism was considered a great heresy because Universalists came to believe that there was no such thing as hell and damnation. They are quite assured that everyone was worthy of heaven. If God is benevolent, then he would never damn his creatures, humans, to hell. But the general public and mainstream religion was really outraged by this idea that religion wouldn't somehow leverage the threat of God's punishment. And the conversation then evolved around, why would people bother to be good if they weren't threatened?
Can I just ask you a question, though? Were the Universalists of the time, do Universalists believe in heaven?
That's kind of a trick question, right?
Okay.
Unitarian Universalism in North America tends to be about 50% atheist and agnostic. And so the idea of a literal heaven is not widely accepted among Unitarian Universalists, but Universalist theology has now gone mainstream, right? So many of the progressive Christian denominations would embrace a form of universalism, and whether or not they believe in a literal heaven or not depends on the denomination.
I think I'm distracting from the main point, though. The main point is that there were people who believed in a God and who were religious in a certain way, who said, why would I do the right thing to avoid going to hell if there's no hell? Mm-hmm. And whether or not there's a heaven, the point was, on their ethical system, the only reason they do good things is to not go to hell. And so then that takes us back to Hosea, I think.
I think so. So let me segue a bit to tell you one of the genesis of this conversation, why this story about Josea Ballou connects with me so deeply, is when I came out as an atheist in Texas in high school, I had a very good friend who's a devout Catholic. And she was so astonished to find out that I was an atheist. And she said, so you don't believe in God? And I said, no. And she goes, but do you believe in the Bible? And I said, well, it's awesome book, great stories, great wisdom. Believe in it. I'm not sure what that means, but it's not a foundation of truth for me. And she said, but if you don't believe in the Bible, then what keeps you from killing me? And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm really worried if only something written in an ancient text is preventing you from harming me. And I didn't know this story at the time, but...
Can I jump in with a quick one too?
Sure thing.
I had a similar experience when I was at university where during the middle of a discussion in class, someone said, well, of course, we'd all be out stealing and breaking things and doing all these bad things if it wasn't illegal. Of course we would. And everyone in the class just kind of looked over like, what?
Well, and this is it, right? Like this idea that we would be, and as we like to say at Christmas, be good for goodness sake. Like, of course we would. We're ingrained with a moral compass.
I'd like to think so.
Aim slightly differently, but there are some things that we can, as empathetic human beings, maybe can agree on. So Josea Ballou, when he was 19th century, and he was confronted with these conversations all the time as a universalist, not believing in hellfire and damnation. And the story is told that he was in an argument with one of his more conservative colleagues. And the conservative colleague just was so insulted, and he said to Ballou, if I were a Universalist and I didn't fear fire and hell, then I could just hit you over the head and I could steal your horse and saddle and ride away and I'd still go to heaven. And Josea Ballou retorted, well, if you were a Universalist, that idea would never occur to you. And I love that kind of smack talk was alive and well in the 19th century. I do, like, it's a weird idea that somehow we would have to connect to threat of punishment, or in our modern understandings of these things, that we would have to believe in God or believe in our particular scripture in order to regulate our behavior.
If I can digress for a moment, when I took philosophy at university, and I heard lots of arguments for and against the existence of God. From my own personal perspective, I've decided that spirituality, belief, it's not about logic. It's not about arguments. And so when anyone tries to throw those types of arguments out, it doesn't really get us to the right place. So that's why I'm really fascinated, and I'm glad to speak with people like you, and I'm speaking with people of all kinds of beliefs. I'd rather hear about experiences. I'd rather hear about impressions and perspectives, and not try and defeat them in advance by arguing why they can't make sense. So whatever happened then following Josea's incident? Or how did you take that going forward?
Let me answer this way. Fast forward a couple of centuries, and I got in trouble in theology class when I told my professor at one point that I find the question of whether or not I believe in God to be irrelevant and not a very interesting question at the end of the day. We're accustomed to thinking of that as such a big dividing point, the either or about God. And then you can have a whole conversation about exactly defining your terms of what do you mean by God is quite a different question. My theology professor, Tandeka, who is a Unitarian Universalist theologian, was quite offended at that thought. She does think it's relevant. But she taught that for Unitarian Universalists, and then I think that most atheists of other stripes could also relate to this, is that we don't use any particular scripture as foundational. And this is where we get in really tricky conversations with people from different faiths. If you are talking about a foundational document, which someone defines as the truth, you are not going to make headway in an interesting conversation, a productive conversation with one another, because your very foundations of what you are calling truth is different. And my trying to convince someone who believes that a scripture of any sort is the truth, I'm not going to be successful in that. And so we ask people to call themselves back to talk about personal lived experience. And this is what is foundational for Unitarian Universalists, is that there's revelation is not sealed. There's not a single scripture that we look to with the capital T truth, but it's our lived personal experience that builds the foundation of what we believe. And when we call people into a conversation about personal experience, rather than argue about scripture or argue about philosophy, then we're talking about a commonality. We're establishing commonality right away. We're bound to find out that we agree on many things. We may disagree about the priorities of our values, but our foundational values are probably very similar as humans.
That is precisely the unabashed objective of what I'm doing here. I want to interview people from all these different beliefs. And instead of saying, why do you believe what you believe? Instead of saying, prove that you're right, because I'm not going to ask someone who believes in God to prove it because they believe it. And it's fundamental. Instead of asking those questions, I'm going to ask, what would you like to achieve? What do you hope we can do together as a people? And what do you try and do for your own family and in your own life? And what I believe is that And what I hope is that we're going to find out that we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to achieve and be good and do those things. And hopefully we can find that commonality and we don't have to have the discussion about what each of us believe in at the base level, but instead how we can work together.
And that's a challenging idea for people, to deprioritize belief, because these are categories of division. Like, it can be an interesting conversation about belief, but that becomes theoretical and is really secondary in our lives when we really want to talk about personal experience. What is your actual experience? When you ask someone who has a challenging idea, if you can extend curiosity and compassion and say, how is it in your life you come to believe this? Now you've got a really interesting conversation, because you're going to find out what built toward that belief. What are the underlying values? What are the experiences that led to this as a kind of conclusion? And once you can get to that, then you can start seeing that as long as we're alive and we're learning and we're having experiences, then we're continuing to learn and grow and change our minds and evolve our beliefs and enrich our values.
Yes, and even for those who have fundamental beliefs that they don't want to change because they adhere to them and it's part of their foundation of their faith, there still can evolve in other ways in terms of how we work together and communicate together and achieve great things together. So we are at the end, if you can believe it. I always say that every interview. I can't believe time flies. So people are going to get sick of me saying that, but it did fly. And so the question I ask every guest, so I'm going to see how you're doing this time and ask, if you think about different areas of wellness in your life, can you think of one that you're neglecting? And if so, can you think of even one thing you can do to foster wellness in that area?
I think I can become so busy that I forget to just really enjoy something as basic as really enjoying my dinner. Instead of rushing through, making that a really important and treasured and ritualized piece of my day. And that in itself is a spiritual practice, to stop and give thanks for a meal and give myself permission to take that full hour off and to enjoy every bite.
I've decided to live by the motto, live life in every breath. Nice. And I'm trying to understand what that means. And I can't tell you what it means, but that's kind of an example, to bring myself back to the moment and appreciate the moment that I'm in and enjoy it. So I hope you get to do that with your next dinner.
Thank you so much, John.
Welcome back to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. The music industry is complicated, in a word. It's nasty, it's backstabbing, it's shady. It can also be pretty fulfilling, and at the same time, completely unfulfilling. And sometimes that just comes down to your mood and your perspective. One of the people I'm working with, a former student of mine, you might remember this from a few segments before, is looking to put out her very first album ever. And that's awesome. I encourage that for anyone who's into music, especially if they're a former student of mine, because it's nice to see them grow from a student into a peer. That's really cool. So a former student of mine had gotten in touch and asked if I would throw some piano and strings and anything else I heard on a few tracks of hers for her first album. And I said sure, and I explained that, here's my rate, here's my points, all that stuff. And she got back to me basically saying she wanted to own 100% because it's her first album. Now, I understand that as a person, I get it. On the business side, that's not usually how it works. Let me set the scene. Let's say you've written a song, lyrics and melody. It's catchy, it's groovy, it's going to be a hit, and you know it. And you come to someone like me and say, hey, here's what I've written. I would love a piano part on this, but I can't play piano. You want to hook me up? And I would say, sure. And I'd write the piano part. And then you'd say, cool, I want to own 100% of the music, though. Well, all of a sudden there's a bit of a difficulty because you didn't write the piano part. You can't play the piano. I wrote it. So who owns that? How does that work? How do we split this up and break it down? You see the difficulty there? It gets even weirder when you start considering producers as well. Someone who doesn't necessarily play an instrument, but maybe adds a couple effects here, a little twist there, calls a shot on maybe a vocal effect here, like a megaphone or a pitch down, or who knows, all kinds of stuff. All of a sudden, who owns what and how much is it worth? To be honest with you, this is the part of the music business that I hate. The business. I hate it. I wish I didn't have to deal with it. But we do, because man's got to eat. So unfortunately, we have to deal with it. In this particular instance, she told me she wanted to own 100% of the music, but she loved what I had done. And so I told her, realistically in this biz, that's not how it works. But seeing as you're a former student of mine and this is your very first album, rather than get bogged down in the nitty-gritty, I'd rather help you create a great piece of music and put it into the world. So that's what we decided to do. Instead of the typical deal, which would be something along the lines of, I wrote this part, therefore I'm entitled to X percentage, I've decided to forego that and instead be credited as producer and arranger, as opposed to a co-writer. And that's just the nitty-gritty you have to do on the legal side of things to make that work for the way she wants to do it. Now, it works out. It's not like I'm doing it for free. Don't get me wrong. I'm being paid for my time and my skills and my services. But it's a little bit of a different setup than what I would usually do. That's pretty much it, though. That's a quick update, a quick glimpse into the way that things kind of work in the music biz. And as soon as that stuff comes closer to release, I'll let you know the artist's name and where you can find the music. But until then, that's all I've got. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
I'm with Al Tordjman, and we are going to be talking about nutrition today. Nutrition is such an important component of Move That Body. What you put into your body is so critical for so many aspects of physical health. And I love to read articles about all kinds of things, whether it's, low carb, high carb, or high fat type diets, how that impacts you. And I invite our listeners to be curious about that and read a lot and learn a lot and keep your mind open. And Al was telling me about some articles he read about sugar. Really important topic to me because I think a lot of people underestimate how addictive it is and the impact it has on us. So Al, tell me a little bit about some of these articles you were reading.
Certainly. Some great articles are by a Dr. Lustig, who's quite a prominent doctor who's been researching the effects of sugar on the body. Fat Chance is one of the books he's written. That's quite a good book. Sugar, the Bitter Truth, and Metabolical are three great reads.
And what were some of the things that jumped out at you when you read it? Actually, when you were talking to me, I knew that there were some problems and issues, but some of the things you were telling me were surprising to me, and I like to read about it.
Well, I can't get into this too deeply, but...
Right, we only have a few minutes.
Yeah, it's just they're really starting to discover how sugar affects the body on a cellular level, and that it's basically believed to be responsible for all of the metabolic diseases that we're encountering, which is becoming an epidemic right now. And
what's an example of a metabolic disease?
So we'd be looking at things such as hypertension, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, and
so sugar is having an impact on all these things?
It's now believed that sugar is quite a prominent factor in a lot of these diseases when consumed in large quantities.
Okay. Knowing what you know now in terms of the things you've read, have you made any changes in your own life to try and get a handle on sugar intake?
Absolutely. I've taken baby steps, first by being aware of how much sugar I'm consuming on, per gram basis, just reading on the package, how many grams of sugar does this have, and realizing that we should probably be sticking to about 25 grams per day of added sugar, not including fruits or sugars in natural foods.
So for example, I like to have a granola bar as a snack in the afternoon. And I remember when I talked to my nutritionist, they said, look at the package, and you're trying to find a granola bar with less than 10 grams of sugar. Is that what you mean? So I'm looking at a package, I'm seeing what I'm eating, and that's what I'm looking at in terms of the 25 grams. I'm trying to keep the daily total within that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good first step. Of course, the more fiber you're consuming, the better it is on how it spikes your insulin. This is why, the fiber component's important. Essentially, becoming a lot more aware of how much we're really consuming. It's believed that people on average are consuming anywhere from 60 to 90 grams a day, which is truly believed to be quite harmful.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question just before I do. Another quick point I learned from my nutritionist, the way I approach nutrition, is I'm trying to avoid big drops or big spikes in my blood sugar level. And the concept is if I let my blood sugar level drop, I'm going to get a craving and I'm going to binge eat. So you want to control it. And it's a good point. You also want to be watching spiking your blood sugar levels because then you're going to drop again too. You were saying that these articles are talking a little bit about how sugar causes damage to the body. At a high level, could you just give me a sense of what you're reading?
So I would say that some of the biggest negative effects it has is what they call non-alcoholic fatty liver syndrome, which really impacts the body on a negative way and can affect all sorts of organs. It also affects the body on a cellular level with the mitochondria, and the release of a lot of insulin in your body is also problematic. Okay.
And the other thing I've heard too, we could probably talk about this for a long time, but we don't have that time. So just kind of to wrap up, the other thing I've heard too is, I can't remember where I read this, but sugar is more addictive than things like heroin. So when you eat sugar, it's just your brain is like, I want more.
Absolutely. They now know that it releases endorphins and it gives you an addictive type behavior around that food.
Right. So I guess the bottom line is if you're concerned about moving your body and staying physically fit and staying healthy and keeping strong, try and read some more, try and learn some more, and try not to have so much sugar in your diet. Keep a careful eye on it, and hopefully we'll all feel better if we all do that.
Great suggestion.
There's a thought. Popped up while running. This is a walking pop-up, not a running pop-up. A little while ago, I had to work out of my law firm's Toronto office. And so when I do that, I tend to take a GO train from Kitchener to Toronto. And then I walk up from Union Station in Toronto up to the building where I work. And it's about a 10-minute walk, I would say. I hadn't been to Toronto for a while. It's really busy compared to walking around downtown Kitchener. It's a really busy city. And I'd recently been in London too, and it was really busy. I saw a lot of people heading to work, and I've mentioned before that depending on my mood, I see them in different lights. So if I'm in a really upbeat, good mood, looking for a great day, I often pick up on everybody's energy and how they're looking forward to getting into work today and something great happening. If I'm in a kind of a down mood and I'm like, oh gosh, it's Monday and I have to go to work. Oh, I wish it was the weekend or whatever. Then I kind of pick up on people who are kind of trudging along where you can tell they really don't want to be heading to where they're heading. So this particular day, I wasn't really in either frame of mind. I was just daydreaming and just walking up the street. I guess I was in a pretty good mood. And I could tell because all of a sudden I just thought to myself, wow, you know what, John? I don't really take time most of the time. Just sit back and think how lucky I am. How great things are. I tend to focus on the negative stuff. One of the things that struck me was that what a great opportunity I have with my life, with my work, with my family life. And how many people are in situations where they're thinking they would just love this opportunity. They would just give so much for this opportunity. So I can't take it for granted. And I can't take my good luck for granted and the position I have and the things that are going on. It's amazing. I just stopped and enjoyed that feeling, enjoyed the moment and smiled, and probably somebody who wondered what the heck was going on, but that's okay. It sometimes feels great to just stand there and feel lucky and feel good and enjoy that moment. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
It's Flipside, and it's John and Sheila.
Hi.
I made a lifestyle change a few months ago. I'm going to say 2 months ago. And it is making a significant difference in my life. And I don't know why, but it's working.
Well, studies show that it's a good idea. So
yeah, well, I haven't read them. So
well, you know, the whole blue screen at night and that whole thing.
I think that's different though. Like the blue screen at night point is that you shouldn't watch TV, use your computer, anything with a blue screen just before you go to sleep. And you shouldn't have your TV on when you're sleeping.
Right.
Okay, so what are we talking about? Here's the twist. I listened to the podcast Marathon Talk. I've been listening chronologically, so I'm still way back in 2019. There was a time where Tom Williams, who's one of the hosts, said that he started leaving his phone downstairs when he went to bed. And he's really into sleep, getting a proper amount of sleep, and I totally buy into that whole program. Makes sense. So a couple months ago, I decided, you know what? I'm going to leave my phone downstairs. I sleep on the second floor. I leave it in the kitchen on the main floor. And you might think, well, big deal, because, you know, all you have to do is not look at it at night. But I've been sleeping better. I can't even explain it. I just have a better frame of mind. I often wake up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I just do, and then I go back to sleep. If my phone is sitting beside me, I used to have the urge to look at it. And even if I didn't look at it, that little conversation with myself, whether I should look at the phone
or not,
was distracting. I never have that anymore because it's downstairs.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I was thinking, after you were doing this, I was thinking, this is a really good idea. I should do this too, because I actually set my alarm on my phone, right? So I'm kind of like, oh, I need my phone because my alarm. But if I get a text, and the other problem is that I'm going to bed earlier because I'm waking up earlier. So people will text me anytime before 11, and I go to bed at like 9:30 now. So that'll wake me up like wide awake. If I hear that text sound, it's, oh my God, it wakes me right up. And then a good hour, you killed an hour. So I was thinking I should do that too. But what if there's an emergency phone call?
Well, that's just life. Like, I think if there's an emergency phone call and you don't get it, you don't get it.
Until the morning.
Yes. That is definitely a downfall. But to me, the trade-off is worth it because, and again, I'm going to have a really hard time. In fact, I can't articulate why it's helping, but I know deep in my heart, I know from the way my body feels that I'm getting a lot of benefit from not having the phone beside me when I'm sleeping.
Yeah, I would really like to try that, actually. I think I will.
Now,
I'll do that.
There is a bit of a glitch. You're right. So what people say is, yes, you need your alarm, but just get a different alarm.
Yeah, I'll just get a different alarm.
The problem we have is we actually bought this cute little alarm clock that works off batteries, and it's kind of retro looking, so I really love the look of it, but it's loud, like click, click, click.
Yeah, it's not interesting that we notice that now because we don't have digital phones or digital clocks or watches or that clicking sound of a clock.
Right, yeah, I remember in your old house when we started dating, you had a really loud clock.
Yeah.
And you would hear it click, click, click all the time.
Click. My mom had like 6. So if you're at her house, there'd be all these different sounds because one's like click, 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 and the other's like click, click.
Now, usually I was relegated to the outdoor patio. Like
that's a whole nother story.
I was relegated to the enclosed patio. And yeah, there was a funny story. So Sheila's mom is notorious for like cleaning and washing clothes and stuff like that. So one time I stayed there. We were just dating. We were younger. I didn't know the parents or anyone in the house very well. Sheila has 6 brothers. Yeah. A lot of them live there. Yeah. So I go to sleep in the enclosed patio and I didn't have pajamas. So
the enclosed patio, the outside door was there was a patio, then there's an outside door. So he was literally locked out.
Probably. Yeah. So, but in any event, so I'm like, okay, I'll sleep in my underwear, and I put my jeans and my shirt beside me. Well, I wake up and they're not there. Like, so I figure I'm going to wake up early. Well, Sheila's mom gets up so early. She's like washing my clothes.
Yeah. Cause my whole life, my mom had we just throw our clothes on the floor. When we woke up in the morning, they would be clean clean, dried, ironed, and back in the drawer. We could literally wear the same clothes over and over again because they were cleaned within the next day.
So I'm like at my girlfriend's house with all the brothers, with the parents I don't know, locked in their enclosed patio in my underwear.
So what'd you do?
I think I just waited and she brought them back out. And the jeans were, I think, ironed by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She ironed underwear.
Which was really weird. I don't know how we got onto this from talking about iPhones being downstairs.
Yes.
But anyway, I would suggest people give it a try. If you don't have 2 floors, leave your phone in the kitchen or far from your bedroom and see if you're not sleeping better at night. It sure works for me.
Okay.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
And it's sign-off time. It's Sheila here with John and Sammy.
Hey.
Hello, and
Hi.
This is the first time we have 3 microphones.
3 microphones. So cool.
Nice
Yeah.
Christmas present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this week I've had such a great productivity week. I found that I'm at that point now where I'm working out and I'm actually excited about going to the gym, and I'm looking forward to it. It really helps me get going. And I could not believe how much I got done after working out. I just was like, oh, I'm going to tackle this and I'm going to tackle that. And I think it's all because of the gym, getting more physical. So that is definitely important. And I'm really happy about it. What about you, John?
I'm also on a really good groove right now. So to steal a line from Sammy recently, I'm habit stacking.
Good for you.
And so initially I decided I was just going to try and get into the gym first thing in the morning before work. And I've been able to do that regularly. I'm feeling amazing. It was initially struggling on the treadmill. I don't know. I guess I was just too sluggish outside for the last while. So I'm doing really well now on the treadmill. And the habit stacking one is I'm now trying to drink 2 liters of water before lunch, 2 liters of water after lunch, and then hopefully another liter before I go to sleep. And I'm going to the washroom a lot. It's embarrassing.
Too much information, John. Thank you, though.
The good sign is, though, I've never really done that before. And I'm shocked at how it changes. So first of all, I'm not having a lot of cravings. And secondly, I'm not craving as much and I just feel better. And I'm kind of blown away. And I'm going to keep doing this and see what happens.
Excellent.
Although, even though I feel bloated a bit.
Yeah.
I'm pretty optimistic this habit stacking thing is starting to work.
That's a lot of water.
How about you, Sammy?
Yeah, no, I need to do that as well. Specifically with the water. I need to drink way more water.
Well, for me, I never used to drink water.
Oh, really?
Ever. I only drank coffee and Diet Coke. That's it. Now I don't drink Diet Coke at all.
Good, yeah.
So
it's the coffee and water now.
Just coffee and water. Yeah, come on, Sammy. Let's not push it.
Anyways, keep the coffee.
Back to you, Sammy.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, so this was the first week that I'd say I'm getting into my routine. So, I'm getting up. I have to drive David to work. So I'm doing all that, taking Lexi on her regular walks. And then I also started teaching again this week. So getting back. Go? It was good. It was a lot of fun seeing everybody, but it is tiring.
Yeah.
So getting home. And then also throughout the break, we didn't have the best sleeping schedules. We were staying up a little bit late and then sleeping in really late. So now kind of getting back into that and actually being able to fall asleep before midnight is my goal this week.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We cannot stay up till midnight.
No, now that I've been working early.
Yeah, normally I can't, but it's just getting back into that from doing nothing for 2 weeks.
Yes. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah,
okay. One more habit stacking for you. Okay. Well, I hope everyone has a great week. I hope you enjoyed the show and we will talk to you soon. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.